back, everybody. And now we are ready and set for our next panel discussion, which will talk about campus diversity, inclusivity, and tolerance. And we have a stellar panelist for this session as well. I'd like to invite on screen Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai, Dr. Subhajit Bhattacharyya, Director, IMT Ghaziabad, Dr. Narendra Singh Rathore, Vice Chancellor, Maharana Pratap University of Agriculture and Technology, Udaipur, Rajasthan, Dr. Subhash Sharma, Dean and Director, Indus Business Academy, Bangalore, Dr. R K Mishra, Director, ITE. And to chair this session, we have with us Dr. Rajan Saxena, former Vice Chancellor, NMIMS. A very warm welcome to all of you. Really glad to have all these gentlemen on the screen for this discussion. So, Dr. Saxena, I'd like you to take over and start the discussion. While the rest of our panelists will be joining in shortly and will be on the screen in just a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kathy, for introducing all of us over here. It is indeed a privilege that I have today of being a part of the BW Education Conference today. And not only that I'm a part of this BW Education Conference, but also the privilege of chairing a panel discussion with just some distinguished leaders in higher education. Like, for example, Professor Janat Shah, who is the director of the IIM Udaipur, Professor R K Mishra, Director of the Institute of Public Enterprise, Professor Suresh Ramanathan, who is the Dean, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Dr. Bhattacharyya, Director, IMT Ghaziabad, Dr. Narendra Singh Rathore, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Maharana Pratap University of Agriculture and Technology, and finally, Dr. Subhash, who is the Dean and Director of the Indus Business Academy. Well, thank you very much, Business World, for giving me this opportunity and also making me part of your panel of jury. We today have a very interesting kind of a topic to discuss, and something that has been always talked about it on the university campuses in the higher education institution. We have all been familiar with this whole kind of a debate that has always existed in higher education. And the debate has been, how do we improve the diversity on our campus? What is it that we need to be doing to improve this diversity? Whether this is a gender diversity or a regional diversity, or it is the people coming from different kind of, with different religious kind of a background, religion background, or in any context for that matter, let's say even from the point of view of the nationalities today that we talk about, or ethnicity that we talk about. So diversity has been one big debate that has gone on in higher education. And we have all been talking about it. In fact, we all understand that this diversity is the only way by which we are able to create what we call it as the creative individuals. Individuals who understand and who value this entire aspect of diverse opinion, because at the end of the day, it is the diverse opinions that really helps you to create something which is very different. It doesn't come about from a regimented thinking. It comes about essentially from the diverse kind of a thinking itself. I personally believe that to encourage this diversity, we need to adopt the inclusive agenda, something that we have been talked about at consecutive over the years. And certainly, this would lead towards what we call it as tolerance. Let me just spend some little time before I really invite my panelists to be speaking at this point of time. You know, the fundamentals of education, what are the fundamentals of education? The first kind of a fundamental to me is the non-discriminatory. The entire higher education institution, by very nature, or not just merely higher education institution, I would say even the schools have to be non-discriminatory in nature. In other words, we need to be opening up the doors to all sections of the society. We need to bring in people from different walks of life back in our own system, not just merely as students, but also as faculty and staff and other kind of of groups of people need to really come on in our system, including our board of governors, for example. So we need to be far more non-discriminatory. The fundamental of education is non-discriminatory, which means obviously no glass ceiling exists in universities. No glass ceiling should exist in any of the higher education institutions. And the second big purpose and the second major purpose is really the holistic development of the student. And if we were to look at it from the point of view of the holistic development of the student, what is it that I really have in my mind? One is very clearly the intellectual development, the development of the intellect, which is where the students come to us. Well, obviously, the students grow, mature intellectually by the time they really graduate from the universities, particularly from the undergraduate education or even in the postgraduate. But particularly, I would say more so in an undergraduate education, because by the time they really graduate in the undergraduate education, there is a greater degree of intellect maturity and intellectual maturity that we can really see in the students who are coming in. The second big kind of the development is the emotional development. I think that we develop the students to emotionally balance their lives. And how do they do that? When they really live in a community, a diverse community, when they really get to understand the highs of the success and the lows of the failure. And it could be in any kind of a scenario that we are talking about it. The third is the physical development. The entire physical senses also then developing, becoming a far more stronger person than what you were when you really join or when the student joins the university itself. And the last major part that, to my mind, has become more relevant today, it is the spiritual development. It is something that we need to be focusing on. Increasingly in management education, this is a subject that we have been talking about it, and in management schools, we have been talking about it as to what is it that we are going to be doing it, and many of these schools have really gone ahead and done something which is different. So the second big kind of a purpose is obviously the skills development, the skills of exploration, for example, the skills of respect, the big kind of a thing, respect for individual, respect for the diversity of thought, diversity of background, and diversity of expression, which is very important. And the third is the interpersonal skills, which are important. And the fourth is the management of uncertainty. This is so very important today in the COVID situation. Nobody had really visualized this, but the fact is that it is brought back to us live, that this kind of an uncertainty can also be there, and we got to prepare our students for many more such uncertainties in their lives to be coming in. And finally, it is the life skills. Well, diversity on the campus, as I said, is really about the people. How do we really bring the people in? And therefore, we need to look at it from the perspective of our policies that are there, institutional policies that are there, whether this is the admissions policy or the hiring policy or the promotions policy or the incentives policy. Now, one of the ways to go forward is to really the compliance kind of a mechanism. There is a statutory kind of requirements that are there, and therefore we comply to those statutory requirements. But that is not really the kind of a way I look at it. I think it is important to develop an assertive action. And the assertive action is where the institution initiates steps to bring in people from diverse backgrounds in the system. As an example, we don't select the student, but we, what I call it as, assemble a cohort of the kind that we want, the type of students that we really want. And similarly, it is in the context of the faculty group itself. Today, I believe technology is a very big kind of an enabler. It's a powerful enabler in pushing the agenda of inclusiveness and diversity, essentially by following the model of transparency itself. I also believe that faculty and institutional leaders have a significant role in the development of academic, administrative, and governance practices that are going to contribute to the promotion of diversity on campus. Well, friends, it is these issues that we are going to be discussing today. And to discuss this, as I said, I have a very distinguished panel over here. And let me now start first by Professor R K Mishra. Each of our panelists is going to be taking about 5 to 6 minutes to be opening up their remarks, to be giving their opening remarks. And thereafter, I'll just, depending on the time, we are going to take up some of the questions from the attendees. And finally, I'm going to just close the whole session itself. Well, let me start with Professor Mishra. Professor R K Mishra, you are such a distinguished academic. You've been in academics for a very long time, and you are in a public system. And so therefore, I'm sure that you would have really countered some of these, or you have really been managing some of these challenges that I just talked about. Professor Mishra.
Thank you, Dr. Saxena. We have had very illuminating remarks. You have given the sense of what I think all of us are going to discuss. And let me tell honestly, I myself have learned a lot from the remarks that you have given. I think people know who are watching the show. I'm sure they have been benefited immensely. And that's the direction I think in which business should move, in which regulators should move, in which government should move, in which the schools should move. Because Saxena, the chair of the session, has used, I think, inclusivity. I think that's very, very important. Now let me come back, I think, further add a bit to what our chair has just observed. One is that, when we talk of inclusivity, when we talk of diversity, we think that diversity is limited only to males and females. No, I think we have to go much beyond that. Yes, so far we have been discussing, I think, that, the kind of students who should come in the campus. We believe that when they are males and females, I think they are a great, good number. I think there is a good, ratio that helps us a lot. That helps us because we have divergent thinking there. One number that was Saxena has just mentioned. We know, I think, something about, I think, the male psychology, the female psychology. And also, I think this kind of thinking helps us because then we have diverse kind of people who go to diverse kind of businesses. And when we go to diverse kind of businesses, this kind of inclusivity, that helps us a lot. But the question is that can we go beyond that? Because we have talked about the essence of the problem, as our chair has just pointed out very, very well. But then, can there be more than one wage? And you remember, I think, what Vivekananda told. Vivekananda had mentioned, Ekam Satyo Vikram Bahura Vadanti. Truth is one, but it can be told in number of ways. So there is only one way, I think, of looking at the problem of inclusivity and diversity. But in my view, I think activities are very, very important. Do schools have diverse kind of activities? And it's there, I think, our business schools have to do a lot more than what they have been doing. I'm happy that we have here, Suresh Ramanathan ji is there. I think, I have been reading him every now and then, and it's so nice to see him over there. Bhattacharyya is there, and on the top of that was Janat Shah has joined us. I think that's a great, news, I think, to those who are reading. And also Prof. Subhash Sharma ji, who has been writing a lot on this issue. So the question is that, do we have diversity of activities on the campus? Now, what happens is that our activities are very much limited only to teaching. That doesn't take us anywhere. That means we may have males and females, but they are only on one track. Can they be taken on other tracks of thinking, innovating, I think, of interacting, I think, of thinking about the local areas, of thinking of the regional things, as our chair has just mentioned, thinking of international things. Can they think of innovations, I think? Can we think of their contribution? Can we have diverse kind of thinking? Because it's thinking, which takes generations and generations to higher ground. So that is one thing. Number two, which is, I think, very, very important, is that can we think of diversity of networking, I think. Now, what is happening is that our schools, unfortunately, which have come from the government, I think, and which have come from the private sector, that India is the be all and end all. The moment you think that our schools are only connected to India, we fail miserably. I think that's how we are not able to get students from abroad. Why don't they come abroad? Why we are not able to internationalize the education? We are not able to internationalize the education because we have not, as our chair has just mentioned, we have not brought that element in our education, in our thinking, in our planning, in people who are on the board. Hardly you discuss a couple of minutes. And then, if you don't think about, I think, diversity at the international level, why people should think, those things, about India. So what I would say is that on diversity front, we have to widen our horizon. Our horizon is very, very limited. Unless we do that, I don't think we move forward. Thank you very much, Chair. I think, let me again once thank you so much, I think, for your very useful remarks and introduction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mishra. Let me now invite Dr. Subhash Sharma, the Indus Business Academy, who has been talking for a very long time about the human values, and he has been not only talking, but he's also put some of those issues in his own schools, programs, etc. Professor Sharma, are you able to listen to me?
He's on mute.
Are you on mute? All right. So let's start. Professor Janat Shah.
Sure. So thank you, Dr. Saxena. And I think Professor Mishra did talk about value. Both of you talked about, how it's valuable. And I think there's a very little debate now on this particular issue of value diversity brings in. There are actually studies which have shown how the quality of even profitability of a companies have been higher when the companies are more diverse, right? Both on the gender as well as on the ethnicity front. So I think, and all of us who are taught in a classroom know that, when you have a diverse classroom, you're able to get a lot more different perspectives kind of. So I think, this issue that do we value diversity? I mean, would diversity add a value or not? I think probably everybody, understands that. I think there are two issues which I will talk about. One, in terms of what have we done to increase diversity within those challenges which Professor Mishra and Professor Saxena talked about. Second, when we try and do that, what are the challenges we face? Okay. So one is what we have done, I think, like a lot of others, is give a certain, diversity score. Right now we give on 2 dimension, one on educational background, because we found that engineers used to dominate. So how do you get more non-engineers? And we have given a diversity score there, as well as on gender, and as well as something on a work experience, right? Regarding, with a result, we have found at least our gender ratio has increased, number of non-engineers have increased. So, right now it's about 30% non-engineers, similarly 30%, girls who come into our classroom, and which has improved the quality of classroom. The area where I think Dr. Mishra talked about, Professor Mishra talked about, is that, finally all our classrooms are Indian, and which is a major difference between what we see globally and what we see in India. So what we have done is we have introduced a course called International Business in Practice, because we realize that how do you bring, greater, this understanding, what does it mean to work in a different culture? Now, some of us have attempted this international exchanges, but there's a limit to which I think none of our schools have been able to increase international exchanges beyond probably 15-20%. So what we have done is we have this course, International Business in Practice, where we physically take our students to different, country for 2 weeks, and we get them to work on a live project there. The focus is obviously on a project initially for a student, but our real focus is on what does it mean to work in a different culture. And we try and do a reflection exercise that, because we are realizing that it's going to take a long time before we are able to actually get many students in our classroom. So we'll have to figure out a way in which to bring this cultural diversity where at least students should be able to understand nothing like if you're able to get a classroom which is more diverse, but we will have to figure out some interventions through which we can figure out a way of getting students sensitized on this. So this is what we've been doing. Let me just talk about certain challenges when we try and talk about bringing a more diverse classroom. I mean, we find this as a tangible way of defining, gender, education. But there are so many other dimensions on which we can look at it. But we all work under, at least be in a public system, work under right to information system. And there's a limit within which we are able to play with our admission, because anything we do comes under a scrutiny. And with a result, we end up with a more objective way of measuring this. I think it'll be nice if we are able to have a slightly more subjectivity, which allows us to bring more diversity than what we do. Second, we find even though corporates talk about saying we value diversity, I think when it comes to gender, I find corporates also seem to value it. But somewhere when we bring in more varied background, a lot of them complain that corporates not necessarily actually, when it comes to fairly recruitment, they don't seem to look at them as that valuing diversity. So sometimes we do get into that challenge that when we get a diversity on a dimension, when it comes to corporate looking at it, it's gender they seem to value, but other diversity, we have faced a challenge on that front. So with that, let me conclude my opening remark. But I think it's a dimension on which all of us will, as a country, will have to work towards. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Shah. And very rightly said that I think you've talked about the kind of value that diversity today brings to this education and also to the corporate world itself. Professor Sharma, can you hear me today now?
There is also a lot of regional diversity. Almost all states and union territories of India are represented among the student population. And for the purpose of developing tolerance among the students, we have a symbol in the campus which we call Omega Circle. So it's a circle which has different spokes. The spokes represent the different perspectives, and so students, when they develop different perspectives, they also develop arguments put forward by us. So similarly, we have some to develop this kind of spirit, and we have a learning model which we call
I think we are. I think we are having some connectivity problem. I think we are running into a connectivity problem with Professor Sharma. Maybe the organizer could possibly fix that up till that before I really come back to him again. Professor Sharma, I'll just come back to you with after they fix up.
Idea.
All right.
And then
meanwhile,
we cultivate among students.
Professor Ramanathan.
Yes.
Let me now invite you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Saxena, and thank you, and good afternoon to all the members on the on this distinguished panel, and hello to everyone listening in. Thank you to Business World as well for organizing this, amazing discussion. So I want to take a slightly different tack. Building upon exactly what everyone else has said about diversity, and when we talk about diversity of gender or ethnicity or religion or regional background, I think we have touched upon all of these aspects, including international students and so on. I want to talk about another aspect of this, which is a theme that is part of what we have in the title of this panel discussion, which is the third idea, which is tolerance. Diversity by itself doesn't mean anything unless there is tolerance for ideas that are contrary to what you might believe. I often feel, having been in the US for over 22 years and having just recently come back last year to take over as a dean at Great Lakes, I often find that there is what I would call a tyranny of the sameness of thought. That we are inclined towards a majoritarianism of thought. That we tend to believe
we are using. I think with that I can conclude. There seems to be some disturbance.
Yeah, Professor Sharma, I'll get back to you, sir. Yes, please hold on. We have Professor Ramanathan who has already started. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was talking about the idea that there is kind of a sameness of thought that permeates our culture and our the way we discuss things. And when we talk about tolerance means the willingness to accept differences in opinion in a respectful fashion. And that is something that I think is something that needs to be inculcated right off the bat, even in our school systems. We need to encourage that kind of a thinking process where it is not my way or the highway. That kind of a mentality tends to permeate everything that we do and say, and therefore we need to encourage that kind of a system where all of us are encouraged to express our thoughts, no matter whether they run absolutely counter to what you believe in. And that is something that having been abroad, I think that is something that I have learned to appreciate, and that is something that I would really love to see happening a lot more. And the academic setting is the perfect setting for that kind of a respectful dialogue. Once you go out into the whole wide world and you start working, people automatically start gravitating towards one opinion versus the other. But in an academic setting, when you are in a classroom or when you are on a campus, everybody should be free to express themselves in whatever way that they want, without fear, without any kind of a feeling that they will get browbeaten into one opinion or the other. And celebrating that tolerance and celebrating that inclusivity, I think, is very, very important as part of the culture. And that is really what academic freedom is all about. So that is something that I really want to touch upon, because it is not simply enough to take into the extreme. What could happen is that we are just filling quotas. We're just saying we need to have X number of female students, X number of people from regional background, and so on and so forth, without actually paying attention to something which is far more fundamental to the fabric of the society, which is, are we truly tolerant about diversity of opinion? Are we actually encouraging people to express themselves freely without fear? And that is something that we need to create as heads of institution. We need to create a culture and an infrastructure that actually facilitates that kind of a thinking process. Yeah. The second point I want to make is about, we've talked about diversity of students. I also want to touch upon diversity of faculty. When I was in the US, I was part of a project called the PhD project. And the PhD project encourages people from minorities, from whether it's gender or ethnic communities and so on, to apply to PhD programs. And this is something which is again very important, because sometimes I find that within the faculty pool, we find a very similar kind of a setting where there are people who all kind of gravitate towards one point of view simply because of their sameness. And again, as heads of institution, particularly those who are granting FPMs or PhDs, I think it is very, very important to encourage diversity even at the faculty level, because the more we are able to build a group of trained academicians who go out and start teaching at other institutions. And all of these members of the faculty should represent very, very diverse points of view, which will actually encourage that kind of a debate in the classroom, which also fosters diversity and tolerance. So those are the two key points that I really want to touch upon, because ultimately, in a campus setting, this is, I think, very important that we actually encourage this kind of an expression of ideas, rather than simply pay lip service to this notion that we need to have diversity for the sake of diversity. So that is what I would like to end with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ramanathan. And I think you really hit the nail when you said that, one of the prime objective or the prime purpose of education is really to develop a tolerant individual.
Yes.
And at a time when majoritism seems to gain so much of a ground in our society, that we have become intolerant to an alternate viewpoint, to another viewpoint, which is a very dangerous sign for the society, and perhaps in the world itself. When this kind of a development takes place, it is fundamentally, it really tends to push us towards a fundamentalism rather than towards a more accommodative and a peaceful coexisting communities and societies itself. And I think the universities, the institutions have a priority, have the prime obligation to really develop this kind of a tolerant graduates itself, the tolerant mindset itself. Wonderful, wonderful, Professor Ramanathan, for your views itself. Professor Bhattacharyya, from IMT Ghaziabad. Yes, Professor Bhattacharyya, let's hear you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Saxena, and all my fellow panelists. As also, I congratulate Business World for organizing this wonderful event today. In fact, what I liked about this title is so rightly sequenced. Diversity, inclusion, then tolerance, and very aptly. And without tolerance, diversity and inclusion doesn't make any sense, right? So this is absolutely perfect. Now, I probably, at cost of repeating some of the well discussed, points altogether, I believe the mankind is growing absolutely differently in different ways only because we argue. We argue because we have different viewpoints. We argue because we respect different viewpoints. And this, different viewpoints will come only when we allow others to express their views. Whether it is on gender basis, region basis, culture basis, caste basis, religion basis, whatever, we listen to everybody. And we give equal importance to all the views. And then collectively, we come up with a very constructive decision to discuss, to decide about our way of growth. From this perspective, diversity is absolutely necessary in whatever way we do, whatever thing we do. So, and one extremely, of course, this happens in some pockets or the other, but usually power and position does not play so much major role in this entire decision-making process. And that is what is one very good thing that mankind can talk about, which usually is seen in the animal kingdom. You've got those alpha male, they determine who will be there in the team, who will have their ways and this, that. We allow every views, every individual's their existence. We respect that. We talked about campus diversity in terms of representation, but I want to talk about something little different. A campus has to be a melting point of all these different thought process. So if we have people from different gender, if we have people from different region, different caste, religion, social norms, but we don't allow them to participate in amalgamation of this thought process, the whole exercise becomes just as a case of we are doing just for the sake of it. Therefore, the intervention should be through appropriate designing of curriculum. The curriculum should be designed in such a way that creates an opportunity for intermingling of all these different views, culture, thought process, right? So that is what is one essential component of ensuring an effective campus diversity. right? So it's not only about the numbers and the representation, but facilitating intermingling of their thought process. That is when the learning will be absolutely perfect, right? Here we all are representing B schools, and therefore probably our focus of discussion is B school. But I want to go a step back. Let us think about science. Let us think about other professional sciences. I believe it is equally important to have this kind of diversity, in those curriculum as well. As we say, necessity is the mother of all, invention. Now think about one scientific invention. If it is not influenced by other factors, coming from other, so to say, the necessities, it will be a kind of marginal growth process in the research field. This is where I think let's talk about physics. The students of physics should also have a concept called empathy. They will understand necessity more appropriately only when they have empathy, which is again an outcome of a multi-dimensional perspective of the thought process. So whenever you talk about creating a multi-dimensional perspective of thought process, you have to have intervention from other disciplines as well. So it is not only physics which can give you the most appropriate. Now, if you talk about aircraft designing, it's pure engineering. But is it pure engineering? You've got so many other things, coming and getting amalgamated. So that is why, even in our all the other programs we have, other fields we have, we must ensure this kind of diversity, not only in representation but also in curricular activities, so that we ensure perfect building of this thought process. So and in the process, we of course some of them will join this school and eventually will run businesses. That's sin. But even when they go for inventing, go for pure physics field, they will keep in mind that I should think about inventing something which will have significant social impact. So my research work will not be focused purely on publications. So that is what probably we should create. And we all represent one field, management, but there are universities which are having different departments, different chapters also. Probably they are in a much better position to have this kind of activities for the science and other professional courses, which will allow them to interact with other disciplinary contributions thought process as well. So I think that is what we should bring in our campus diversity wherever possible. I think NEP 2020 is, to a certain extent, is compelling us to move in that direction. So that's where I'll stop.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have we been able to resolve the internet problem with the Professor Sharma? Organizers? All right. So let me just start. I see him coming in. Yeah, Professor Sharma, I hope we are all able to hear you. You're all waiting to hear you. All right. So let's start by raising some issues with you all. And all of you have really made some very, very interesting points and interesting observations. And let me start by, first of all, by Professor Janat Shah, with you, Professor Shah. When you raised this whole issue of the diversity score that you really have started developing it in your admission process itself, which is indeed a variation from what generally the IIM policies have been. Now, how far that was acceptable? I mean, do you feel the constraints emerging from RTI? Or do you find that there is a kind of a constraint emerging even from students wanting to join in? How have the students looked at it from that kind of a perspective, from when it came to, let us say, the admission policy itself? What was the student reaction to that?
Sure. So I think there are two kinds of, one which we've been doing because of law. Okay, Dr. Saxena. one, for example, recently there was as per law, we had to look at economic weaker section, right? So today, actually, if you look at, so there's one part which is coming, especially for a publicly funded institution like us, the whole lot of affirmative action comes from a. So
Professor Bhattacharyya, would you like to start off? If you are, and if you are able to listen to me, if you raise this whole issue of argumentative society and the empathy that we need to be developing, are you able to listen to what I'm saying? Are you able to hear me?
Actually, there's a we have internet connection. We couldn't hear you, and Professor Shah was saying something, and he was in the middle of it. So I think he should conclude then.
Yeah, I think there's a.
Okay. Yeah.
So Dr. Saxena, I can hear you.
Professor Shah.
And if you, yeah. So you had raised this whole issue of what is the student reaction and society reaction in general, right? So I was just, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Is the internet connectivity problem with me, or is it an internet connectivity problem generally?
I don't have any problem. I think I'm listening very clearly.
I'm fine. I can hear everybody.
Professor Ramanathan, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Professor Janat Shah, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Yeah.
So, you had raised this issue of, the way society looks at it and the way students look at it and maybe the way recruiter look at it. And so, as I was saying, we have two kinds of, one which is by law.
There.
So maybe
Professor Shah.
So Bhattacharyya, you want to come in if you're, he had, Dr. Saxena had asked a question
Yeah.
I think he has some problem, connectivity problem.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Professor Bhattacharyya, would you like to take this shot on empathy and also in terms of the diversity scores that Professor Janat Shah talked about in the student selection?
Yes.
There are two things that we're talking about. One is on the admission policy. The second is about the development of the empathy itself.
Admission policy, fundamentally, I think, as far as admission is concerned, no amount of reservation will give you any, appropriate, dignity to the segment you are appointing under reservation. That's what I believe in. Therefore, as long as merit is the primary, parameter for selection, that gives you dignity also, that gives you full support in every sense. However, there will be people in that, in a certain particular segment, you want to extend financial support to them, please do that. But I do not think, reservation actually gives, rather people admitted through this reservation way, are attached with some kind of stigma. So therefore, I don't think reservation gives them the right amount of dignity. They should be selected only on the basis of merit. However, give them full support, whatever they need in, in improving themselves, training themselves, and basically, the second part is empathy means what we talk about, understanding each other well, understanding everybody else well. So you have to have that openness of your mind. That should be, your curricular activities, your training process, grooming sessions should encourage people to have this kind of openness in their thought process. Initially, there will be, people coming from different background, different group, different training, different culture. They may have different type of behavioral issues, but eventually the institute or the campus should have appropriate grooming process to encourage them to tolerate, to accept, to appreciate others' cultures, other ways of life. So it is the responsibility of the institution to ensure that this happens.
Great. Professor Janat Shah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, and I'm able to hear you very well. Yeah. So I think there are two parts. One is if it's a land of law, I think we don't discuss that issue internally because it's a law, right? But there are issues related to, as I said, we find because also we come under Right to Information Act, there are only those areas which are very objective in nature where there is no subjectivity involved, only those dimensions we are able to. And I'm saying that does.
I don't know. Are we getting it?
We can hear you.
All right. So, Professor Ramanathan, would you like to look at it from the perspective of how do you think, this whole aspect of empathy? You talked about academic freedom in the US, that academic freedom, which is so very fundamental to the development of an alternate viewpoint. How would you really develop that, and what is it that you are doing back in your own institution to develop such kind of graduates who understand that there is another viewpoint also?
Yeah. Thank you. In fact, I'm sorry, Doc. I was hoping to hear Dr. Shah complete his thought. Dr. Shah, if you would like to continue, talking and complete your talk, then I can take.
Suresh, go ahead. Yeah. I think you go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as this whole idea of freedom, I think it is entrenched in the way, at least in the US where I was, it is very well entrenched in the system itself, that right from the word go, in fact, even in the school systems and where you talk about even in public schools and so on, you find that people are actually encouraged to express their thoughts, no matter how different they are. And in fact, this idea of critical thinking, that you are able to reason something out, that you are able to assimilate points of view which might be different from each other, that is inculcated right from the get-go. It is in the Indian system in which I grew up, and I went through the system here, and what typically you experience in the classroom is that you are kind of basically memorizing things. You're there is not much of critical thinking that is encouraged, particularly in the middle school and high school level. And that is really where I think you need to start developing that kind of a mindset, right? So, Dr. Bhattacharyya was talking about, this notion of merit, and how this is important in the context of affirmative action that we might take. But here's I think a question to ponder about: how do we recognize merit if the system itself is not at the school level, is not in favor, or is not providing the right kind of opportunities to people from underprivileged backgrounds? We are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of the types of people who are coming through in terms of merit, and we are not being inclusive enough, right? So once again, I think it all boils down to how our regular school education system is actually going to encourage that kind of diversity of thought, merit. All of these things, critical reasoning, all of these things have to come very, very early on, because that is the only way you build this kind of tolerance. And, I would argue that if I were to start creating an atmosphere of tolerance in a business school, I would say it is too late.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Creating a new system of tolerance where tolerance did not exist, it is already too late. The formative years are when you actually build that appetite for tolerance. If you're talking about 25, 26 years old people, their brains are already well formed and their attitudes are already well set. It is very difficult to change that. Yet, of course, you can create an atmosphere, you can create a feeling that, you are free to express all your opinions. We have student groups, based on the principles of diversity. All of these things are happening. And I have, my student committees, the very first thing they talk about, I have a dean's student leadership committee, which is, a group of about, 16 students from, our different programs, who are all kind of, coming up with ideas by which we can encourage the campus atmosphere, provide, thoughts for, how, greater inclusivity, including, we didn't talk about, sexual identity. That is another dimension of diversity that, we need to acknowledge. These are all interesting topics to talk about. But like I said, tolerance, inclusivity has to be brought in very, very early. It cannot be brought in at the level of a business school. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Shah.
So maybe I'll just probably build on, what Professor Suresh was talking about. And so one issue, I know it's late, but I think still we can do something within our own campuses, the way you are attempting. So one thing which we have done is since we are in a tribal region, what we do is we take our students to spend a week with the tribal groups. So at least there we find this whole idea of a notion of merit, right? They realize that till that point in time, they think they all come here because of merit and they're God's gift to mankind. But when they go and see a tribal village where students don't have access to education, don't have access to health, suddenly their outlook changes in life. Because I think that's one way of building empathy, that not everybody has access to all the resources. So we're all privileged. So how do we give back to society is something we attempt at least in that direction. But one challenge which we have faced, and I'll be here, love to hear from rest of you. I think business school faced one real challenge. There's an obsession about placements.
Correct.
And with a result, the kind of issues you're talking about, it's very difficult to do a meaningful discussion of a business school campuses because, all clubs, committees, they seem to focus so much on a placement. There's very little scope of doing a lot of discussion of the kind we would ideally like to do. And we struggle, I would be honest with you, that how do we do this discussion when all their mind seems to be focused on placement? All club activities are placement. So somewhere as a society, I think Indian schools have played a big role in that part. There's too much of placement obsession. I think if you want to do something meaningful in this area, somewhere it'll be nice if you're able to de-emphasize. But I don't know, that's something you can do only collectively. So I would like to hear from other people on this. As I said, we do a couple of things, but we find a huge constraint in terms of how do you do this meaningful dialogue.
Quite. I think it's so well said. I think, Janat, that about this whole aspect of placement focus of the Indian business schools. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, we are all able to hear you very well. But till he comes in, I don't know, I would love to hear from Professor Suresh, Subhajit and Professor Mishra about this placement actually crowding everything out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, so correct. And it's a kind of, for us like private B schools, this is, one of the major issues because, we have to earn every rupee before we decide to spend it. So it's a major challenge. And if the placement gets hit in 1 year, next year's admission will get affected. This is a kind of, cyclical process. So we cannot really undermine the importance of that. But despite having these concerns, we, this constant, we have to move ahead and do whatever we think we should do for the benefit of the business education, because the students should build up a much bigger perspective than that first job focus. When they, as of now, what we see, the students have typically what they are going to get as the first job is their focus of life. And in my first, introductory speech, I talk about, the career focus. I say when you go to a gym and you aspire to build up a body like say Salman Khan or somebody, what do you expect? Paying the fees enough, or you have to toil and continue to do that hard work even when you are not in the gym. So this orientation has to be changed. So it's not the first job, but the career and the bigger perspective of their existence that they have to be told, and we have to try in so many different ways.
Right. Professor Mishra, and then I'll come back to Professor Sharma, because I'm so sorry there has been that internet connectivity problem.
Many things have been told, but one thing, I am working on education and helping the ministry. Also, I work for this NEP. Let us come to evidence-based things, not thoughts. Education for Muslims and minorities have been very, very poor in this country. These are the facts. And unless I think we open up education for tribals, as we told, for Muslims and minorities, I don't think we can go forward. And there, I think the concept of merit has to undergo a change. Merit should not be an absolute merit. You can have sectional merits, I think. There is no problem in having sectional merits, but we have to give opportunities, I think. It's a question of leveling up. If we do not do, we fail miserably, I think, as business schools, I think. We have no then place to stay in our country. I'm very, very clear on that. Then coming to, I think, another thing. See, we talk of freedom. Who gives freedom, I think? Have we got freedom on ourselves? We always talk of, regulators, and we subjugate our mind to them. Why don't you think that we want to go this way? If you want to go this way and you are ethical and you're right, nobody can stop you, I think. But you don't want, I think. You want to ascribe failures to those things because, as somebody rightly told, we have bankruptcy of thinking. We don't think diligently. We don't want to take risk. And once you join, I think, in the business school, public or private, you think you are a servant, I think. You are just being paid. You are a director or anything. You don't have your own identity, I think. You don't assert your own identity. Your thoughts are not known. You have not integrated yourself with society. Who cares for you? They don't care for you because you don't have individual thinking. You don't have freedom of thinking. You don't think freely, I think. Freedom of thinking will come from, can you think freely? You don't think freely, I think. That's very, very important. Then the issue is of culture, I think. On campuses, it seems, we don't give variety of food, I think. This country is a country of diversity, I think. Variety of food, I think. Variety, I think, of, discussions, variety of thinking. That is missing in the campus, even in teaching also. You might have been talking about blended teaching and number of other things, syndicate and all that. They are there. But you don't have divergent thinking. Your schools, are they known for one thing? When Suresh was talking about US, I have been to, I think, a couple of these countries. I have my own experiences. The schools are known, I think. Let me tell you one thing very clearly. When you say that you become placement agencies, you are placement agencies because you don't have good professors. If you have taught those professors, I think boys will come to you and people will come through to your schools. This shows very clearly that you have mediocre teachers and you have mediocre, people, who are running these schools, I think. Maybe at the board level or at the lower level, I think. You get the best. When I go to Booth School of Business, I find 45 Nobel laureates. What kind of people you have in teaching, I think. When I say this, let me congratulate Prof. Janat Shah. You understand? There is a big recognition, I think. In a couple of days, I think, was there for him. How many people recognize you? What is your contribution, I think? Where do you stand? What is your interconnection with the industry? Are you a puller, I think? Do people come to you? Are you being heard in the government? Just not because you're director of a school or an IIM or IT or a private school. Have you created your own identity? You don't have your own identity. Economists have their identity. Anthropologists have their identity, I think. Scientists have their identity. You don't have your own identity, I think. Create your own identity first and then come to, I think, the basic issues. As Amrit Sen talked about argumentative, Indian. And the reason was that he had to go elsewhere, I think. He spent a lot of his time in Harvard or in US, I think. You don't want, I think, you don't want to listen, I think, to divergent thinking. People disagree, you condemn them, and you think that they are your enemies. No, I think the questions of leaders, I think, we have bad leadership, very bad leadership in business schools, I think. At, I think, directors level, I think, maybe at the board level, maybe, I think, people are assigned at different kind of coordination jobs. Get good people, I think, over there. Give them the confidence. Don't come in their way. Stay out, I think, of their way and see what they do. I think that's how scientists, they do. That's how, I think, good men, they do. They stay out, I think. They do their own work, I think. So that's, I think, very, very important. And multidisciplinarity is the must, I think. Let me tell you, business schools cannot grow. Yes, we talked of the universities. Can you make your institution, I think, what kind of people are coming to your schools? Can they enter? Can they talk? Why don't you call people from different kinds of things? So that people, those who come out of business school, they may understand life is not only education. Life is not only a job. Life is not a designation, I think. Life is not, I think, a level that you have got. Life, I think, is a pool of divergent kind of things. You don't tell them, I think, you are one-minded people in the business schools. You have one track, I think, and you spoil, I think, the students, I should say. We are spoiling our students. We are creating clerks. They might be getting very high salaries. You are great followers. You are not great leaders. So let me tell you, I think is that you, I think, change. You do better things, I think, and take risks and come out and say, yes, I am getting resigned. I'll resign my job. But this is what I want to say. How many of you have come out? I think you are sticking to your jobs. You never come out. Have you written a note against the policy? No, never. You are subjugating. You just bow your head. I have not come across, I think, any such thing. You just stand up like, you don't accept yourself.
Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. And you very rightly said. I think there's a whole issue of what kind of culture are we really developing? Are we developing
You can't negotiate with secretaries, I think. You can't stand up, I think. You have not created your own constituency, I think. You don't, I think. When you get you do.
Yeah. Dr. Mishra, now we are running out of time. So thank you very much. And I think you really made that point very clearly, that I think the whole aspect of alternative thinking, the whole aspect of diversity, the whole aspect of inclusiveness, or tolerance for viewpoint, for example, or the diverse thought can only grow when we as leaders are comfortable in our own skin itself. And that, I think, is extremely important. And which is what was really your kind of a perspective. And I think very well said. Also the aspect of multidisciplinarity. And this is what exactly almost all of us are saying, that unless and until the institutions become multidisciplinary and move away from a single discipline focus to becoming a more multidisciplinary focus, that until that time period, I don't think we will be able to develop what I call it as a community of diverse thinkers and a community that can really argue and argue in a much more fact-based and an informed basis itself. Most of the time, otherwise the arguments are just tilted towards one kind of a side itself. And I've seen that in my own kind of an experience when I was leading NMIMS up front. And I've seen, for example, even in research seminar that we were doing on the university day, when it came to management seminar, management topic, or a speaker from us from the management area, the entire management faculty was there, but none of the other disciplines were there. And likewise, when there was another discipline speaker, there was that discipline only, but there were no other speakers and faculty. And that is really goes contrary to the very culture of development of a viewpoint. I don't think no viewpoint can ever get developed unless and until we respect the views in different disciplines itself. It is indeed unfortunate that we have missed Professor Sharma in the discussion because of the internet connectivity. Business World would like to, if Business World has the time, and Professor Sharma is I can see him. I've been seeing him, but I'm not able to get him. Kathy, do we have about 3-4 minutes?
If we can hear Mr. Sharma, I think there is a lot of connectivity issue. Mr. Sharma, if you can just address us so we can know that we can hear you.
Yeah, Subhash, put your video off. Can you just put your video off and just speak on your part?
Yeah, the bandwidth will probably work better.
That would really make a big difference. That can help you in terms of, and that will give us the privilege of listening to you, the benefit of listening to you.
Absolutely. So while Mr. Sharma comes back in with his audio in, I would like to pose a question to Professor Mishra, as we got from our audience. While the topic you were just touching upon, how do we decide or how do we curate our faculty in every institute to be of merit, to be of advantage to the students of these times? Like, what can be the solution for this?
The only solution, schools should be schools of ideas. They should not be home for religion. They should not be home for petty politics. Ideas. We must grow, I think, and we must transcend to, higher level of things. Unless you think, bigger things, I think. Unless you have an idea. If you have a good idea, you will have good students, good followers, good teachers. But if you don't have good idea, your idea is, I think someone rightly told, is just to produce, just to get a salary in the faculty, just to get a promotion, just to place people. You don't go anywhere. You are a lost out business school. Nobody cares for you. How many ideas you are promoting, I think, As Edward De Bono, who was my teacher, he told, creativity, I think. We must put premium on creativity. We must put premium on risk. We must have people of divergent thinking. We must not think of religion, division, as we rightly told, intolerance. Intolerance is killing our country. If India has to grow, India will only grow when India is one, I think. India can be one only when all of us are one. We can't be divided. And let me, I think, finish. When I was a student, we had, the person who got Nobel on wheat, I think he came. And we were management students, we attended, I think. What we are doing is, as we have divided the country in terms of politics, religions, and, in terms of provinces, we are dividing the academics also in terms of, educational, streams, in terms of, different divisions, in terms of different specializations. These are low-level things. What is more important is holistic. Asia believes in, we are holistic. We are not like, we don't have reductionist approach of West. You take, I think, an onion and take layer by layer. You are left with nothing, I think. If we have to grow ideas. And that I see, I think, when Suresh was talking, I have taught there. Bala was there, who did a great job. And when, we talk of, Janat Shah himself is a great leader, I think, and he's now thinking of research. Because ideas, they come not from teaching, they come from research, which you take the classroom. You're committing a basic mistake, I think, only of teaching, I think, from videos, blended teaching we are talking. This is not important. What is important? What is your fresh idea? If you don't have an idea and you only think of technology, it's useless, I think. We are, telling wrong things to our students.
Great, sir. We need to become ideas factory. I think we need to become
Absolutely. We need to be ideators first, then technologists. We have Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, if you can say something, maybe we can engage with you for another 2 minutes before moving on. Unfortunately, I think the connection is really bad where Mr. Sharma is. So, Mr. Saxena, would you like to?
Yeah. Let me now conclude the session.
Yes.
Well, it's been truly a pleasure and a delight to listen to each of our panelists. It is unfortunate that we missed out on one of our very distinguished panelists, Professor Subhash Sharma, whom I said have been doing a lot of work in the area of human values, and he has come out with very, very innovative models. Even when he was with the Institute of Plantation Management and later now in the Indus Business Academy itself. It's been wonderful listening to you all, and I quite agree. And what we really were talking about is that at a time when the society seems, the global society seems to get tilted towards a majoritarianism, or for that matter, let us say, is getting pushed towards some very radical kind of a thinking itself. How can education institutions retain their flavor and continue to refocus themselves on developing graduates who are more tolerant? And because ultimately at the end of the day, it is tolerant individuals who really make the society. It is not an extreme viewpoint that really make a society itself. And that's where we are really talking about it, whether this is in the area of coexistence or collaboration or co-creation itself. Everything is really going to be happening only when you really have the tolerant individual, for which obviously diversity becomes the kind of a bedrock itself. And the diversity that is really going to help towards developing an innovative society, a society which is creative. And we in our own institutions have a very big role to play. Quite obviously, we need to move away from a discipline focus to a more multidisciplinary focus, and therefore bringing in a much more holistic development of an individual itself. And that is what we really say. Thank you very much, Business World, for hosting this wonderful education summit. Thank you, Business World Education, and the entire team at the Business World for giving us this opportunity. All of us expressing our thought, and some of the great radicalists, one of the biggest radicalists in our Professor Mishra sitting in over here, provoking almost all of us to move up and say, we are not education institutions, but we are the ideas factory. That, I think, is a wonderful thought. I think it's a thought that we should all live with and start ideating on it, turning it inside our minds, because that would really make a difference to the education. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saxena, and thank you to all our panelists. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, sharing your insights, and as Professor Suresh is suggesting, I will put this message out to BW team so that they can create a group so that there can be actually an action taken around the points that are spoken. And all of you gentlemen and people like you, the leaders in the industry, are the nation builders. The culture that we build in our country is through education. So thank you so much, everybody, for all the efforts and time here. Thank you very much.